Grab my coffee here. All right.
Like they would do, Adam and I were in Hanson. It's a really sweet story. They both finished college, which makes it unusual. So a little bit about both of them. Adam and I was born on August 1788, which is the best birthday because it's my birthday too. So that was just kind of funny to find that out. Grew up in a minister's house, and they were very proper, and he didn't like to get dirty, which is interesting since later in his life he definitely got very dirty. He was very intelligent, and he liked to read books. The book said, the 25 Surprising Marriages book said that he was very energetic and had lots of energy, but when given the choice, he would read a book instead of doing things actively. He was the top of his college class, just again showing how brilliant he was. After he graduated, he went to New York City to pursue an acting career, and while he was there, he got mixed up in some not so noble things. He just didn't like the life that he was living very much, so he decided to go home and try to sort out his life. And on his way home, it's the story that we talked about in class about he was next to a man who was sick and dying. He just stayed awake that night thinking about what would happen if he died, and the next morning he found out that it was Jacob Hermes, a college friend, the one who would actually make Judson question his faith and just question God. So he went back home, and he dedicated his life to Christ on December 2nd, 1808. And after that, he applied for overseas missions with 6 other men. And on the same day that he applied for the mission board, he met Anne Hasseltine. So now a little bit about her. Her birthday is December 22nd. She was the youngest of 5 children. The oldest was a boy who died at sea, and then she had 3 sisters. She was very spoiled and had a very carefree, fun life. She didn't really care about God. She didn't think she needed him, was just very strong-willed and did whatever she wanted until she was 16 and was reading a book by the British author Hannah More. And between that book and Pilgrim's Progress, she just really saw her need for a savior. So she became a Christian then. So like I said, they met right after I applied to the mission board. And a month after they met, he wrote a letter to Mr. Hasseltine, basically saying, I can't offer your daughter anything but pain and suffering, but can I marry her? And he decided to let Anne make the final say, and she really questioned whether or not she wanted to marry him or if it was a wise decision. And eventually she decided to marry him. But before they got married, Adoniram became impatient with waiting for the mission board to raise his support, so he went to England to ask for the London Missionary Society to support him. But on his way, he got captured by the French and taken to France, actually, because they thought he was British. And so he spent some time in France and couldn't really get out because he couldn't speak French to tell them that he wasn't British. Eventually, he did make it to England, and they told him, the London Missionary Society told him that he would have to decide which society to join, but they wouldn't both support him. So he went back to the New England Congregationalists and told them that if they didn't support him, he would become British and go with the London Missionary Society, and they didn't like that, so they decided to support him. So the relationship, Anne and Anne went very fast. On February 5th, they were married. On the 6th, they were ordained for ministry. And I say they because the book points out that Anne was very dedicated to also becoming a missionary. It wasn't Adoniram was becoming a missionary, and she was just going along because she had to. She wanted to be a missionary too. But then February 10th, they were supposed to set sail for Burma. It ended up being like a week later or something like that they actually ended up sailing because of weather. So on their way to Burma, Adoniram started studying about baptism by immersion and just trying to figure out what he believed on that because neither of them had been immersed just because of the way they grew up. And Anne was very adamant in her disagreement with that. But by the time they landed in Calcutta, India, they were both on the same page on that, and they became baptized. They were baptized and became Baptists. While they were in India, they were told they couldn't go to Burma because of the situations there in Burma and just how no Americans have been there yet. And so they just waited. And then while they were in India, they were actually kicked out by the government and told to go to England. But instead, they went to this island, which I probably tried to pronounce the name. It's kind of interesting. And while they were on the island, they found a ship going to Burma, which was also very unusual because usually ships didn't go off of the island, really, especially not to Burma. And they were trying to decide if they should go or not. And Anne was 8 months pregnant at the time, so they decided that because this was their opportunity, they needed to go. And while they were sailing, she lost the baby. Once they made it to Burma, it was a hard transition just because the book describes it as a very dark country. They weren't Americans and they couldn't speak the language, so it was very hard. And during the first little while that they were there, they lost another baby at the age of 8 months due to disease. While they were there, though, they learned Burmese. They both went to language school, but Anne learned more through like just doing household tasks, like shopping and directing their servants of what to do, and she had to use it, so she learned it. And shortly after they got there, well, a few years after they got there, they were very discouraged because they hadn't seen any converts. And Adoniram thought that maybe if he went back to India and got a Christian, the people there would see Christianity with somebody who was similar to them and want to convert, and that would be something they would want. So he went back to India by himself and stayed in Burma with some other missionaries, a printer, and his wife who were there then. But because of conflict again with the British, they left, leaving Anne by herself. And at this point, she had been told that Adoniram's ship was lost at sea, so she didn't know if he was coming back or if he was still alive. So she just waited by herself for Adoniram to return. And finally, he did return. Also, during this time, Anne had to go back to the States for a liver treatment. But after she got back, they were able to move to Rangoon, which is the capital, to work with the emperor and his court, just sharing the gospel with them. And again, because of confusion about what nationality they were, Adoniram was thrown in jail because they thought he was British, and they had heard that the British were going to like overtake them. But Anne didn't just wait around for him to get out of jail. She attempted everything she could to get him out. She bribed the soldiers and the guards, and it really was even a bribe to even get into the jail to see him. And one of their biggest fears was a manuscript that Adoniram had been working on of the Bible. So at one point she hid it in their backyard so that the Burmese wouldn't get it and take it away from them. And at another point, she sent it into Adoniram in a pillowcase as a pillow of sorts. During this time, they also had another baby named Maria, who I think outlived Anne, but she didn't live to adulthood. And at this time, also, Adoniram was moved to a different jail, and it was really even a miracle that he made it to the other jail because they made them march, and they were all just weak. While Adoniram was in jail and got very sick with a couple different diseases that were pretty significant, and then after he was released, I think it was like a fever that she caught, and she ended up dying from it. After about 8 years, Adoniram ended up remarrying Sarah Boredom and Emily. But he also was able to finish the Bible translation project. And about 4 months after marrying Emily, he passed away on April 12th. 4 years, after marrying Emily, he passed away. So some of the things that were a lasting impact from the Judsons was they were the pioneers of American foreign missions. They were the start kind of to American foreign missions. Another key thing that the book mentioned was Anne's willingness to go really impacted ladies, wives in missions. Just the fact that she wasn't drug along like some of the other ladies that we've studied. She wanted to go and wanted to serve while she was there. So that really had a lasting impact. And then also their translation of the Burmese Bible. So that's all I have for you. I just used the book. So
Yeah, that's all you needed. Thank you. Really well done. Appreciate it. All right. Well, tell Dr. Cole, thank you for loaning you to us. And, enjoy the rest of your class there. Appreciate it, Clara. All right. You always pick up a few things that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about him getting arrested, on his way over the first time and having to spend time in France. A lot of issues to come on it. I should have brought my Burmese Bible this morning to show you guys that Pete gave me. Really. All right. Okay, the attendance sheet. I'm surprised. Ella, you didn't tell me. You were just testing me to see if I would remember on my own. Is that right?
Yeah. You passed the test.
So, Ella, you're on the 4th, which is Monday. Okay. All right, that's. Okay. The final exam. Just a word about that. Okay, let's see, if you were in Romans, this is a repeat for you. So the final exams are supposed to be given in class this year, not online. So that means we're actually supposed to meet in here at the assigned hour on whatever day it is. I don't remember, I don't have the final exam schedule. Have you guys already received the final exam schedule? I've already sent that to you. Okay. So just look and see, but bring your laptop. So just as a general rule, for all the final exams, they're saying, bring your laptop because you're going to be doing it on Canvas, but in class. So that's the expectation. So we will comply. But maybe we'll bring
Is
some
there a
donuts.
final exam, or is it like the midterm where we just read something and answered questions?
No, there's a. Well, thank you. There is a final exam, comprehensive final exam. Maybe I could just look at it with you briefly, sometime before that day. Let me see here.
You guys know what day our exam is on?
What's that? Oh, day. Yeah, it's in the syllabus, the final exam, but the date just says 13 through 15. Yeah, when you have that, could you pull it up and just tell us what day that's on?
I'm looking at it, but it takes me 10 minutes to figure out when it is.
I know, it's kind of a weird, I've been here 16 years and I'm still,
Today's a what?
Is it-
This one's
it's
Wednesday.
Yep, it was 10 o'clock class.
it'd be at 10 a.m.
On Wednesday? Yeah, that's what my memory, if my memory serves me.
So maybe Monday, could we do like a review?
Yeah, yep, and if there are things, if we don't get as far along in the notes as, if there are things on the final exam that aren't there, I'll just delete them. Yep, before you take it. So that'll be Wednesday at 10 o'clock, final exam week.
Our final, just comprehensive or
It's all true, false, and multiple choice.
just on all the missionaries you studied?
Yep,
Okay.
yep. It's basically a great big old quiz, just like taking the quizzes. I mean, questions could be a little different, but
Yeah.
it's same format. Yeah. All right.
Dr. Mark, how is it?
Do we have on Tuesday? Do we have our Monday class?
Yeah, what happens is, there's some confusing things just because the Tuesday of finals week is a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class day. So we will have class on Monday and Tuesday, because Tuesday will be Wednesday. The last week. The reason they had to do that is because to make it even, the Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Tuesday, Thursday classes, they had to grab one from the finals week. Does that make sense? It doesn't need to, I don't know. It's the first time that we've ever done something like that where a Tuesday is actually functioning as a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. Yep. I forgot about that in Romans class this morning, so. All righty. Yep, so we'll meet twice in a row. And so actually we'll meet 3 times that week. Monday and Tuesday, and then the final exam is Wednesday. So Sharon, either Monday or Tuesday, we'll do the review probably.
Okay.
We'll figure it out. Sorry, it's kind of confusing. All right, let me up here again. All right, let's see. We are, where do we leave off?
Cam Townsend, number 2.
Number 2 on Camp Townsend, okay. Okay, we got, all right, so it looks like we're right there. That look right?
We have a few points under.
We what?
We have a few points underneath.
Okay, yeah, we did, we said that he joined the Central American Mission. It was founded by who? Who founded that mission?
Schofield.
Good. And there was tension over evangelism versus Bible translation. We talked about that. He has difficult marriage to Elvira by now. Look, I hope that you guys aren't getting the idea that anybody that becomes a missionary is going to have marital issues. I mean, the Johnson relationship really was refreshingly positive, but that's not the case. But the fact is that that was a different time period. And during that time, it was customary for men just to say, this is what God wants me to do, you need to come along. But not everybody was that. Give me an example of somebody that didn't do that. The wife was not really on board, and so he decided not to go to China. Who was that?
Was that Schofield?
No, it's Schofield. I'm going to Latin America.
Simpson?
Yeah, no, yeah, A.B. Simpson, exactly. Yep, A.B. Simpson is the guy that didn't, and God greatly used him. So, yeah, and then the Kakikel New Testament is, remember it was a guy from that tribe that had told him, why doesn't your God speak our language if he's so smart? And so he wanted to expand this to other tribes as well. And the mission insisted that he stay with the Kakikel Indians. So here's the guy, okay, look, there are people in ministry that go to one place and they stay there forever. And there are other people that seem to be bouncing around all the time. But there are pastors like that. You'll meet some pastors that maybe, were 1 or 2 pastors their whole life. And the other guys that served in 5 or 6 churches. And it's, there are different reasons for that, but God wires people differently. And Townsend, he wanted to move on. Once the Bible was translated into that language, his burden was not to stay there and to keep discipling them, which was important, but that's not what he was wired to do. See, it's really easy sometimes in ministry to compare yourself. This person has more of a discipling ministry. This person has more of an evangelism ministry. This person has more of an itinerant ministry. Who has the most valuable ministry? Well, it's the wrong question. They're all valuable ministries. And he resigned from the Central American Mission because he was burdened to do Bible translation. So, nothing wrong with that. And he founded Camp Wycliffe in Arkansas in 1934. And of course, what was the name of the organization that became associated with Wycliffe, or actually preceded Wycliffe? Remember what that was called? It still exists up in Wisconsin. the Summer Institute of Linguistics, SIL. You'll still hear that name today. If somebody mentions SIL, it's connected with Wycliffe, okay? But he went down, he founded Camp Wycliffe in Arkansas. And guess what? He was not organized. Now, it's not uncommon for people like him that are visionaries, they've got to get on the move, and it's not uncommon for them to be disorganized people. And somebody that tends to settle into a place tends to be a little more organized. It's just kind of the way people are wired. But this Wycliffe eventually becomes the largest independent mission known. I don't know what mission that would be today that's largest, but Wycliffe is still a pretty large agency. In fact, we'll take a look at it online here in just a moment. So why was there a rocky start for this camp? Well, people questioned his honesty. He would kind of, cut corners a little bit in his dealings with foreign governments and supporters. I think it'd be wrong to say he was a liar. I think he was just I think in his own mind, he was kind of doing what God told Samuel to do when he went to anoint David, right? God said, go and tell him that you're going to have a feast day here. And that wasn't the real reason that Samuel went to David. He went to anoint him as king. And I think that Cam Townsend kind of viewed the things this way. It's not totally wrong what I'm saying, but it's just not really the real reason. He's in some question his relationship with socialists. They thought that because there was a lot of socialism in Latin America, a lot of communist tendencies, and some people thought that he was making friends with socialist leaders, which would have been wrong, because he didn't seem to be as concerned about working with unbelievers too, to get things going. And he actually wanted to work with Roman Catholics, and he asked for permission he had a board of directors by then, and he asked permission from the board of directors to work with the Catholics, and they said, no, you can't do that. And frankly, I don't know how you feel about that, but I agree with that, because most of Latin America was Roman Catholic, but very, very much unbelieving. And to join hands with the Roman Catholics would have just confused everything he was trying to do. So there was an application by a Catholic scholar, and a very talented, very good linguist. And so Cam Townsend, when guys like he is, they tend to be very pragmatic. And this guy's good. He can help us understand the languages, but the agency said no. Okay, the Bible Translator Board said no, you can't be a Catholic scholar. Okay, so he was disappointed, but he accepted it. So then along comes the Pentecostals. Remember, Pentecostalism was also very popular in Latin America, right? Just like it is in most of Africa. And so guess what? A Pentecostal couple applies. They're good with linguistics. And he's thinking, man, we got to. And the agency said no. But then he complained. He said, if you don't let them, I'm going to leave. So they said, okay, we'll let them come. All right. So now, would you have worked with Pentecostals, in this? Would I? You could argue, look, Pentecostal theology is not going to come into this. This is Bible translation. If you want to be pragmatic about it, that's what you could say. We're not going to be holding, healing services and speaking in tongues and all that. They're just going to help us with Bible translation. I get it with the Catholics, because everything's Catholic here. That would be a miscommunication. But Pentecostals, that's the way he saw it. Okay. And he accepted Black people and women. How dare he? Right? Well, he did. And today we look at that and we say, what's the big deal? But back then, a lot of people have been in favor of that. Mhm.
Dr. Mark, today when they do Bible translating, do they only work together with like national Christians there, or do they also have people that are like not Christians but like trained in
Okay.
like English or like Hebrew and Greek or whatever?
Yeah,
Or do they only have Christians?
okay. They will work with unbelievers on a certain level. This is one of the differences between Wycliffe and like Bibles International. Bibles International will, the whole process from A to Z, they do it only with believers. That's my understanding. Wycliffe says, look, when it comes to actually translating in the Bible itself, actually coming up with the text, they want believers because theology is going to influence the way that you word something in the text, right? But they would say on other levels, when we're just consulting people about the way that the language, what's this word mean in this culture? How do people use this phrase? They said we can use anybody because we're not trying to translate something into the Bible at that point. Well, so they would be okay with that. And frankly, I probably would too. It can get a little bit, sticky. But if you're only we consult secular sources all the time to find out what a word means, how it's used. We don't restrict ourselves to Christian sources. I think probably Bibles International avoids that just to keep it clean, just to avoid, So, and my answer may be a little bit overly simplified, okay, but that's what I understand to be the difference. Yeah. All right, remember that guy I told you about, Kenneth Pike? There he is. The guy that was kind of a kid, remember, and he would hold objects and get people talking. So he was brilliant, even though he seemed a little bit immature the way he acted. He's just a fun-loving guy. He did a great job of getting people to communicate. All right, let's talk about Clarence Jones. Does anybody remember reading about Clarence Jones? Who he was? Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to switch from Bible translation to something else. What specialization would Clarence Jones be involved in? Well, let's find out. He was born in 1900, the year of? What happened in 1900? Boxer Rebellion in China. Of course, he's not in China. He's in Illinois. Anybody here from Illinois? You lived in Illinois, right? Are you? Yeah, Illinois, then Florida?
For 18 years in Illinois.
Okay. All right. What part?
40 minutes outside of Chicago,
What was the name of the suburb?
Naperville.
Naperville, okay. He was the son of Salvation Army officers. Now, did we talk about the Salvation Army already in here?
Not really.
Okay. The Salvation Army was an evangelistic tool. It was people who had been in the military. And, that's where they kind of came up with the idea of Salvation Army. It's not really an army, but, And he was the son of people who worked with the Salvation Army. By the way, if you go to, like, Walmart today, you'll see a Salvation Army person out there ringing the bell. Have you seen that, Miriam?
Yes, I always thought that they just made that up for movies. Like every time we would watch like
Yeah.
movies in Germany that came from America, I was like, oh, they just made it up. And then I came here and that actually
It's true. They're very careful. They don't try to corner people or pressure people. We came out the door and I didn't have any change, and the guy said, "Hey, have a good day. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you." And we're not. It's hard to even say for sure how many Salvation Army workers are even Christians. I'm not sure to what extent it's still even a Christian organization. It's become, I think, probably more social in its emphasis. But anyway, he played trombone, okay, and for their band. So now they're ringing bells, but there was a time when they'd stand out and they'd play music and stuff. And he started playing the trombone from the time he was 12 years old. That's pretty impressive. So who are the musicians here? Any instrumentalists? You play an instrument? Violin? No.
Yeah, and piano.
And piano. Who else plays an instrument?
I play violin and piano.
Oh,
I played in high school, but I'm not good.
what'd you play?
Piano, and then I did percussion and band.
Cool. All right. Laurel, you sing. You play?
Piano a little bit.
right, well, okay, my friend Matthew.
Not musically talented.
Hey, that's all right, man. We'll take you. Yeah, I've never played the music. I sing, but never played an instrument. I play the radio. So, but he graduated. See, he graduated from Moody at the top of his class, and remember that Moody is one of the fruits of A.B. Simpson's ministry, right? And he served in the Chicago Gospel Tabernacle with Paul Rader. Now, remember that A.B. Simpson was instrumental in starting the Gospel Tabernacle. Remember that? There weren't very many people interested. It started off small, but he got it going. Paul Rader was, in that day, he was a well-known evangelist. He's held meetings there in the Chicago Tabernacle, Gospel Tabernacle. So Clarence Jones was there with him, playing his trombone. Okay, he plays the trombone there. And both of these are important, he became program director for their radio station. So he's getting practice without realizing that someday he's going to use this experience in South America to start one of the biggest radio ministries known at the time. Right? So he takes an exploratory trip to South America. Okay, and I don't remember how he heard about South America, but he ends up taking an exploratory trip. And, you know, he didn't like what he saw there. Isn't it interesting how many people we've read about that go someplace and they don't like what they see? Remember, David Livingston didn't like what he saw in Africa, neither did his father-in-law, others. But he was criticized. Why? Because he wanted to use the tool of the devil in missions. What was the tool of the devil? The radio. So why would anybody call the radio the tool of the devil?
Probably like how people call internet tool of the devil.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, a lot of the stuff that was on the radio was bad, and people were listening to it, and
Was
so
it that, or was it the fact that they didn't really understand how it all worked and they were just suspicious of it?
oh, you mean they thought it was demonically?
Yeah, or like, kind of. Like, they didn't necessarily think it was demonic, but they're just like, I don't know, this is weird technology, I don't know what's going on.
I think the criticism came more from American missionaries,
Sure.
not from the nationals. Just I told you the other day, right, about the couple I knew in Washington that they would not use the internet because it was a tool of the devil. And the idea there was not the way it functioned, but what was being used for. Any form of technology can be used for good or bad. Technology is amoral. So yeah, or like TVs, a lot of people, and I don't know what your convictions are on TVs, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but when I was in high school, it was not uncommon for people to say, I don't have a TV because it's a tool of the devil. I'm not going to put that thing in my living room, And so, it's not something that was just limited to the radio. And he had a vision. What was his vision? What do you want to do?
Radio program.
He wanted to use the radio, to announce the gospel. And remember, he was a musician, so he put music on his station. And he'd worked at the Chicago Tabernacle radio station, so he had a lot of ideas. They played music, and they had sermons and testimonies, and probably reading stories, all sorts of things. He said, man, I could take this to South America. But do you remember why they called it Jones's Folly? There's a specific reason why they thought this would never work. Well, they said that they would never be able to get the radio to work, and it was not a good place. It was a bad place geographically to make radio work. Okay, so he kind of goes back, discouraged. I mean, he attempted to do the same thing in Venezuela, I'm sorry, in Colombia, Panama, and Cuba, and everywhere he goes, he's just getting the same criticism and discouragement. And it just, the government wanted to control radio. You have to understand that in some countries, even if you buy a radio station, the government can break in anytime it wants to and say, we need to have a political announcement here, so we're going to come in, and so I remember in Brazil, we had a radio ministry in the valley where we were serving. And if the Catholic priest wanted to come on and do a program of some sort, you could come right in and just take. Now, I think in that case, they were renting. But even so, if you're renting radio time, that's airtime, that's your time. But in Latin America, if the priest wanted to come in, they'd let him in because he's a big shot in town. So I think what they did is they ended up actually buying a radio station so that they wouldn't have to deal with that. Anyway, government was rejecting them everywhere they went. So he comes back frustrated, he's embarrassed, he's wasted all this time and money. He's been talking this thing up and now he comes back and he has nothing. In 4 different countries, he's been rejected. Does anybody happen to remember how this got turned around? You're reading. Right? Have you read this part yet, Clarence Jones? I'm behind enough. You should have read this. Let me take a look and see where we are here. Yeah, this is back in November 15th. But that's before turkey and the pumpkin pie. Well, let's find out. He decided, I'm done with this. I'm going to go join the Navy. And the Navy rejects him. You know why? Poor guy. How would you feel by this time? I'm a nobody. You know why the Navy rejected him? He couldn't pass a vision test. Okay? So it wasn't a wartime. So, if it had been, but he couldn't pass the vision test. So he's rejected even by the Navy. So this couple comes along whose name, there's a picture of them in your book, Reuben and Grace Larson. Okay? And God uses this couple to turn this ship around. So they were missionaries in Ecuador, okay? And they visited the Chicago Gospel Tabernacle, CGT, in 1930 to share their work. Okay? Remember, he's been in South America, right? And but he hadn't been in Ecuador. And what they told him was, their conclusion was that Jones had visited the wrong country. And he's probably thinking to himself, yeah, right. Tell me another one. You just went to the wrong place, my friend. If you come with us, well, what missionary wouldn't say that? But somehow he just felt like God was using this couple to take him there. His enthusiasm was renewed, restored. And so he decided to take them at their word and go to Ecuador with them. And so what happened? Reuben Larson actually negotiates with the Ecuadorian government. Why him? Well, he's been living there. He knows the people, he knows the culture. And so he says, come and work with us and I will contact the Ecuadorian government and negotiate a contract. And they got a 25-year contract with them. Okay? That's a long time, 25 years. That's a huge contract, okay? Well, now he's excited again, okay? In fact, notice that he was already on his way to Ecuador, probably on a boat, heading to Ecuador when he got the cable from Jones saying, hey, they gave us a 25-year contract. And so, now here's the thing. The thing I like about Clarence Jones, he had lots of chances to give up, right? He could have, any one of those countries, he could have given up. And then he comes back and he tries to join the Navy and they won't even accept him. He could have just said nuts to it. I'm done trying to serve the Lord. I'm done. But he didn't give up. And that, because Miriam, are you familiar with the phrase nip it in the bud? Okay. When a plant just begins growing, a flower just coming up before it opens up, you say you nip it, you cut it before it blooms. So the phrase nip it in the bud is kind of like we try to stop something before it gets too big. And so Satan likes to nip our enthusiasm in the bud. He likes to find ways to discourage us and get us to quit before things happen, before God uses us. And he didn't give in to that. So now he's all excited. But his troubles aren't over. He gets to Ecuador, and does anybody happen to remember what news he gets that makes him up? Just tends to discourage him again. What do they tell him in Ecuador?
Was it something along the lines of it, like the radio part not working?
People who are engineers, experts, they said the mountains here and the equator would be insurmountable obstacles. You can't do a radio ministry because of the mountains and the equator. These are engineers telling him this, not just anybody. So here he's got a 25-year contract. He's given up everything to go back again now to South America. And when he gets there, they tell him this will not work. I mean, what do you do? What do you do? Well, he ignores the warnings. Now, was that a good idea? Well, this is where it gets kind of interesting. I mean, if I had an engineer come to my house and say, this system will not work at your home, just to see, I would probably tend to. Now, my son David, he would go on anyway. but I mean, he was so convinced that God was in this that he decided to ignore their warnings. And what happens? They launch HCJB radio, which went on for years and years and years and years. It is heralding Christ Jesus' blessings. HCJB radio. So what was it? Well, let's see. Go ahead and get that. I mean, look, what they discovered is that the mountains of Ecuador actually became the best place in the whole world to beam a radio station, radio signal. It was just exactly the opposite of what the engineers thought. That's something. And because of the high altitude and because it's on the equator, it could reach people on both sides of the equator, north and south hemisphere. So it just it became really, really, really big. Okay, so there's a picture of Ruben Larson. He helped him with the station. Okay, and by the way, this all began right around 1945. Which, all this was happening pretty much during World War II, 1940, 45, right in there. But they're away from the war out in South America. Let me just get off of this for a second because our time is nearly up. I just want to go online here and show you a couple of things. Okay, oops, not that. I want this. So, fine. This voice again, here you see that was the first video, blah, blah, blah. I just changed his name, thing. I thought his name, maybe it hasn't. Okay, just a minute. I'm going to go right on their site. Okay, no, it's still going by the same name. Jesus' name. Anyway, it's all Spanish, but now later on, another radio station actually became even bigger than HCJB, and that was Trans World Radio. And I can't remember how many. And of course, nowadays with the internet, it's no longer an issue. You don't have to have a place that can broadcast, to the world like they did then. But at that time, this was really, really big. And so, yeah, there is a website about it. So is radio still a big ministry? Yeah, in many countries, even if they don't have good, good signal for an internet connection, they can still many times, listen by radio. They have radio towers everywhere. So you kind of have to evaluate where you are. Here's what with the Bible translators. So I apologize, just computers spend that way for something. There it is. And if you go on here, you can find something about the history of it. It's done very well. Very good website. So there's a ton of stuff on here. I think it might be here that you find the history. Let's see about mission and vision. Just see if that's where it is. Come on. Well. Okay. Maybe download their map, and there's just a lot. So these are. All right. Well, I'll give you a couple free minutes, I think, rather than getting into the next one. Stop there for today. Thank you, guys.